Chapter 2: The Gathering Storm. The underground club was a haven of relief, but the tension was palpable. After the last of the audience had slipped away into the night, Red Vector, Lionheart, and Shammy huddled together in their makeshift green room. The thrill of their latest performance was tempered by a gnawing unease. "Did anyone else see that shadowy figure near the back?" Shammy asked, her voice a hushed whisper. Lionheart nodded, his broad shoulders tense. "Aye, looked like trouble. Could be one of those bloody joke squashers." Red Vector frowned, running a hand through his unruly hair. "We need to be more careful. The more popular we get, the more dangerous this becomes." As they spoke, Red Vector's mind drifted back to his early days in the Czech Republic. Growing up in a small town, he had always been the class clown, delighting in making his friends laugh with silly jokes and clever puns. His love for comedy blossomed in the vibrant underground scene of Prague, where humor was a form of resistance against the oppressive regime. It was there he learned that laughter could be a powerful weapon. Lionheart's gruff voice pulled him back to the present. "Remember that time in Belfast when the English patrol tried to shut down our pub? We gave them a show they'd never forget. This is no different, just a different stage." Shammy chuckled, her laughter lightening the mood. "You and your stories, Lionheart. Just don't get us into too much trouble." Born into an Amish family, Shammy had grown up without modern conveniences. Her transition to city life was filled with humorous mishaps that became the heart of her comedy routines. Her naivety about technology was often a source of laughter for their audiences, but it also made her uniquely creative. As the night deepened, they discussed their growing popularity. The underground comedy club was no longer a secret. Citizens from all walks of life were sneaking in to enjoy a taste of forbidden laughter. The performances were becoming a beacon of hope, a sign that the oppressive regime could be challenged. Meanwhile, the Central Maple Committee was not blind to these changes. Increased surveillance and stricter security measures were their response to the rising tide of laughter and rebellion. Public screens flashed new warnings about the dangers of humor and the need for vigilance. The committee's grip was tightening and the air was thick with tension. In a dimly lit office, the joke squashers were plotting their next move. The room was adorned with stern portraits of committee leaders, their expressions as humorless as the regime they represented. The air smelled of antiseptic, a reminder of the sterile order the committee imposed on society. Agent Thorne, a particularly ruthless and intelligent officer, stood at the head of the room. His sharp features and cold, calculating eyes gave him an air of menace. Thorne was known for his cunning and his zero-tolerance approach to dissent. He had a reputation for being unyielding, his methods brutal but effective. His voice was as cold as his demeanor. "We will infiltrate their ranks," he declared to his subordinates. "And when we do, we will crush this rebellion at its source." Thorne had a peculiar habit of twirling a silver coin between his fingers, a remnant from his childhood that he carried as a lucky charm. Despite his ruthless nature, he was a man of peculiar habits. He detested loud noises, preferring the silence of his office where he could plan his strategies in peace. His favorite drink was a meticulously brewed cup of black tea, which he prepared himself every morning with an almost ritualistic precision. He turned to his second-in-command, Agent Blackwood, a man equally feared, but with a penchant for sarcasm. "Blackwood, what's our latest intelligence?" Blackwood, who was known for his dry wit, smirked slightly. "The comedy rebels are gaining traction. Their latest performance drew quite the crowd. Seems people are getting a bit too comfortable laughing." Thorne's eyes narrowed. "Comfortable is dangerous. Comfort breeds dissent. We need to remind them of the consequences." Back at the club, the comedy rebels were strategizing. They knew they had to stay ahead of the joke squashers. "We need new tactics," Red Vector said, his voice steady. "We can't just rely on our performances. We need to be smarter." Lionheart grinned. "Physical comedy, mate. Let's get the audience involved. Make it harder for the joke squashers to spot us." Shammy nodded in agreement. And we should reach out to other underground groups. We're not the only ones who want change. Their plan was taking shape, but the danger was growing. As they finished their meeting, an unexpected knock at the door startled them. They exchanged wary glances before Red Vector cautiously opened it. A figure stood in the doorway, cloaked in shadow. I have information, the visitors said, their voice low. The Central Maple Committee is planning a major crackdown. You need to be ready. The comedy rebels exchanged surprised looks. Who are you? Shammy asked, her curiosity piqued. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a familiar face. It's me, Old Blue, the visitor said, pulling back their hood. Old Blue had once been a trusted member of the Central Maple Committee, but had disappeared years ago. Rumors had circulated about his defection, but no one had seen him since. Old Blue, Lionheart exclaimed, clapping him on the back. We thought you were gone for good. Old Blue shook his head. I've been in hiding, gathering information. The committee is more vulnerable than you think, but we need to act fast. Red Vector nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. Tell us everything. As Old Blue began to explain the committee's plans, the comedy rebels listened intently. The information he brought was invaluable, detailing the committee's weaknesses and the joke squashers' strategies. With this new knowledge, they could adapt their tactics and stay one step ahead of their oppressors. Wait a second, Shami interrupted, a sly grin spreading across her face. Remember how we first met Old Blue? We should tell that story. Lionheart's eyes twinkled with amusement. Ah, yes, the great toilet paper caper. Red Vector chuckled. Oh, that's a classic. Old Blue, do you mind if we share? Old Blue sighed but couldn't help but smile. Go ahead. It's a good one. Red Vector turned to Shami. Yeah, you start. You were the one who accidentally triggered the whole thing. Shami nodded, her eyes gleaming with mischief. All right. So this was back when I was still figuring out the city life. I'd just discovered the joys of indoor plumbing and, well, I might have gone a bit overboard with the toilet paper. Lionheart snorted with laughter. A bit? You clogged the entire building's plumbing. Shami waved her hand dismissively. Details. Anyway, the maintenance guy was none other than Old Blue. Only back then, he wasn't Old Blue yet. He was just Blue, the grumpy maintenance man. Old Blue interjected, Grumpy. I had a right to be. I spent hours fixing that mess. Red Vector continued the story. So there we were, all trying to help poor Shami out, when Lionheart here decided to crack a joke about the great flood of toilet paper. Old Blue heard it and actually laughed. Shami picked up. It turns out that Blue had a secret love for comedy. We got to talking, and he mentioned he was tired of the committee's humorless regime. That's when we knew we had a new ally. Lionheart added. And the rest, as they say, is history. Who knew a plumbing disaster could lead to such a strong bond? Old Blue shook his head, chuckling. You lot are impossible. But yes, that's how we met. And now I'm here to help you take down the committee once and for all. As Old Blue finished speaking, Shami shifted her weight and promptly tripped over a stray cable, landing with a thud. She winced, rubbing her elbow. Lionheart smirked, shaking his head. Ah, Shami, what would we do without your daily dose of slapstick? Red Vector grinned. Just try not to injure yourself too badly. We need all the rebels we can get. To Perdele? Red Vector muttered under his breath in check, a familiar curse escaping him. I can't believe we're dealing with this again. And Shami rolled her eyes, smiling despite herself. I'll do my best, but no promises. Old Blue, leaning back in his chair, took a sip from his flask. You know, Red Vector, I still miss Czech beer. Nothing like a cold pilsner to end the day. Red Vector nodded, a hint of nostalgia in his eyes. Best in the world. What's in the flask, Old Blue? Just some homemade gin. Old Blue replied with a wink. I've got a still hidden away. Keeps me sane in this crazy world. Lionheart grinned. And what about comedy, Old Blue? What's your favorite? Old Blue's eyes twinkled. I've always had a soft spot for the classics. Chaplin, Keaton, Marx Brothers. They knew how to make people laugh without saying a word. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the cracks in the building's facade, the comedy rebels knew that their fight was just beginning, the storm was gathering, and they were ready to face it head on. With Old Blue's information and their unyielding spirit, they prepared for the battles to come. The stage was set for a new chapter in their journey. The real battle was only just beginning, and the comedy rebels were ready to face whatever came their way with wit, courage, and an unyielding belief in the power of laughter.